Chapter 1. The Boy Who Loved Soccer. Edson Arantes do Nascimento was born on October 23, 1940, in the tiny village of Três Corações, Brazil. Even in 1940, there were many parts of the world that did not have electricity. Most of southeastern Brazil was one of those areas. In honor of their village finally getting electricity, Edson's parents named their first son after the American inventor Thomas Edison. Edson's father was named João Ramos, but went by the nickname Dondinho. Most Brazilian men are known by a nickname. He was a soccer player for the town's team. Edson's mother was named Celeste. 2 years later, his mother had another son, Jair. Edson had not yet been nicknamed Pele. Like all Brazilians, the Nascimento family spoke Portuguese. Brazil had been a colony of Portugal until 1822, when it gained independence. In the 1700s and 1800s, millions of Africans had been brought to Brazil as slaves to work for the Portuguese. The Nascimento family had ancestors among those African people, so Edson had very dark skin. Dondinho loved playing soccer and hoped that his sons would follow him. But playing professional soccer was not an easy life. In Brazil at this time, every village and town had a team, but only the very top players on the biggest teams earned the best salaries. The small teams, like the one in Três Corações and nearby towns, could not pay their players well, and that made life hard for Edson's family. They lived in a brick house that was nearly falling down in places, and Edson didn't own a pair of shoes until he was 7 years old. In 1943, Edson's sister was born. She was named Maria Lucia. When Edson was 4, Dondinho was asked to play for a team in Bauru, a larger town to the south. He was also promised a second job for when he was not playing soccer. This was good news for the family. On the way to Bauru, Edson was excited to ride a train for the first time. He was thrilled to see the country of Brazil rush by the open window. He nearly fell out of one before being caught by Dondinho. Life in Bauru was not easy. The family's house was also very crowded. Edson's grandmother and his uncle Jorge had also moved to Bauru, so the family could stay together. The house had only a small backyard, and it was often muddy. They had no air conditioning in the steamy summers, and they heated the house during the winters with a wood stove, which they also used for cooking. It was Edson's job to stack the wood that was delivered to the house each week. Dondinho's team did not provide the second job it had promised him, and he had injured his knee, which meant he could not play all the time. Sometimes the family struggled just to have enough to eat. Their relatives tried to help them out. Even Edson had to help. He worked as a shoe shine boy at the railroad station. He also sometimes worked at the soccer stadium when Dondinho played. He loved watching his tall, strong father leap above the other team's players to knock the ball into the goal with his head. Soccer or football. Around the world, the sport Dondinho played is known as football. Every language has its own word for it. In Brazil, where the national language is Portuguese, the word for the sport is futebol. In Spanish, it is football. Germans call it Fußball, and Italians use the word calcio, while in Danish it's fotboll. In the United States, the sport was once called association football, so that it would not be confused with the other game that Americans call football. Assoc is short for association. From that comes the word soccer. Every boy in Edson's neighborhood played soccer. He spent many hours playing with his friends. He was fast, and even though he was small for his age, he was one of the best. The boys were too poor to buy a ball, so they got an old sock, stuffed it tightly with rags, and tied it with string. This lumpy ball was kicked all around the streets in their neighborhood. The goalpost might be a pair of old shoes. There were no real fields, and very few organized leagues for children. Edson did have one advantage: his father. Dondinho loved showing his boys all that he knew of the game he loved. They practiced dribbling and passing with the sock ball. He told them about the positions on the field and how to shoot the ball at the goal. He showed his sons how important it was to be able to play well with both feet and how to control the ball no matter how it came to you. Edson loved this time with his father. The more Edson played, the more he had dreams of being a pro player like Dondinho. One day, he told his friends, "I'm going to be as good as my dad." About a year after they moved to Bauru, Dondinho finally got his second job. He worked at a government health clinic, sweeping floors and helping the staff. Edson sometimes helped his father at work. Dondinho would use the time to tell Edson stories of his life in soccer. As Edson's dreams grew bigger, he grew even closer with his father. Now that the family had enough money, Edson could finally go to school. Poor families in Brazil needed to save money for school fees and supplies before their children could begin classes. His mother and his aunt sewed up his old shorts and made him a nice shirt. He got a box of colored pencils to use in school. But Edson, the boy who loved playing soccer, did not enjoy school. He did not like sitting still, and he did not like doing homework. He often sneaked out to go swimming or to play soccer with his friends. When he was in class, he talked too much. As a punishment, his teacher sometimes stuffed his cheeks with paper. Other times she made him kneel on hard, dry beans. When Edson was about 9, the boys he played soccer with started calling him Pele. Most nicknames in Brazil are based on a person's name, what they look like, or how they act. But no one really knows what Pele means. "I've been back to Bauru many times," Pele later wrote, "and have asked all my old friends from those days, but they don't have a clue how or when it started." At first, he hated the nickname. He was even suspended from school for hitting a boy who called him Pele. But he eventually grew to love the name that he would soon make world famous.